Today we're getting into the latest tech, EV, and Tesla news, including Tesla beating its own range record with the Model 3, Tesla outlasting many other cars in a durability study, SpaceX unveiling its AI satellite, OpenAI officially going public, and more, so let's get into it. First up today, real-world range tests are something we're always looking at on this channel, and Tesla just got handed one of its best results ever. That may be shocking because a couple years ago, Tesla used to significantly underperform on a lot of these tests. In any case, Edmunds runs every EV through the same real-world driving loop, and the 2026 Model 3 rear-wheel drive Premium just became the most efficient EV that they have ever tested. The EPA rates this car at 363 miles, but the Edmunds test car went 393 miles on a full charge, 30 miles past its official rating. The car used 21.7 kilowatt hours per 100 miles in this test against an EPA figure of 25, which works out to about 4.6 miles per kilowatt hour in real driving. The Edmunds loop is 60% city and 40% highway with the climate set to 72 degrees, so it leans towards everyday driving. In that same test, this sedan outdrove bigger luxury EVs like the Audi A6 e-tron at 392 miles and the Mercedes CLA 350 at 385. The Mercedes CLA 250 Plus did go farther at 434, but nothing has matched the Tesla on efficiency. If you're shopping for an EV, real-world results are really what matter a lot more than an EPA rating, so this is a very good look for Tesla and the Model 3. I will say this article gets a little confusing because it seems like they don't know the difference between the Model 3 rear-wheel drive and the Model 3 Premium rear-wheel drive, because there is a cheaper version that has a smaller battery and less range than this. Next up today, one of the oldest knocks on EVs has always been that they won't last, and a new durability study says otherwise. iSeeCars looked at more than 174 million vehicles and ranked every brand by the chance one of its cars reaches 250,000 miles. Toyota came out on top at 17.8%, followed by Lexus, Honda, and Acura. Then tied for fifth was GMC, and you have Tesla at 4.6%, the only EV brand anywhere near the top of this list. A Tesla is twice as likely to reach 250,000 miles as a Subaru, more than 10 times as likely as a BMW, and it ranked ahead of brands people think of as bulletproof like Mazda, Volvo, Mercedes, and Porsche. On the luxury brand list specifically, Tesla is third, only behind Lexus and Acura. Part of the reason is just how EVs work. There's no engine oil system or timing components to wear out, and far fewer moving parts overall. Now, of course, battery health is the question people always raise, but results like this suggest that batteries are holding up a lot better than people assume. It's great to see that from an EV company in general, and from Tesla in particular. I think a lot of people think of Subaru as this car that will last a long time, but Tesla is doing much better than even them. Now, if this is the kind of tech and Tesla news you like staying on top of, make sure you're subscribed and hit the notification bell so you don't miss these videos when they go live. Next up today, over at SpaceX, they're about to go public, and right before that, they put out a 31-minute technical update with Elon Musk laying out their AI satellite plans. SpaceX officially unveiled the AI-1, the first generation of its AI satellite. It's basically a solar-powered data center that flies or orbits. It carries 150 kilowatts of peak compute payload, 120 kilowatts on average, and its deployed wingspan is 70 meters. That's wider than the wingspan of a Boeing 747. The satellites also aren't locked to any one chipmaker's hardware, so they can carry whatever AI chips make sense at that particular time. The whole idea is that solar power works far better up there in space. Panels in orbit get sunlight around the clock with no weather or atmosphere cutting into that output, and as Elon put it, cooling is much easier in space. To build these, SpaceX also announced a brand new factory called Gigasat in Bastrop, Texas, with over 1,000 acres of land and more than 11 million square feet of building potential. Gigasat will make the solar wafers, the solar cells, and the satellites themselves, with AI satellite production expected by the end of 2027. Now, that is an Elon timeline, so keep that in mind. The solar buildings are already under construction, though. Elon also says the Terafab chip factory will be around 100 million square feet, which is 10 times larger than Tesla's already very large Gigatexas factory. On launch capacity, Elon said, quote, "With Starship, we'll be aiming to go from 2,500 tons to orbit to millions of tons a year in orbit. We think we can get 1 million tons to orbit a year in about 3 years." SpaceX also showed off next-generation Starlink terminals built for much higher volume, with Elon saying, "We ultimately think there will be a few 100 million Starlink terminals out there." On concerns about cluttering up space, Elon was specific, saying, quote, "Space is very big. It's not like space is going to get crowded. Space is enormous. If you actually look at it relative to the Earth, the satellites are so tiny you can't even see them." Elon also replied to a thread about SpaceX's valuation, saying, quote, "If this is all SpaceX achieves, we will have fallen far short of our goals." As always with these timelines, I would take the 2027 dates with a grain of salt, but the buildings are actually going up and SpaceX shares start trading on the NASDAQ on June 12th, with retail investors and all able to buy in. It is pretty crazy to see how quickly things are moving in this space and how quickly SpaceX might become this huge data provider for all of the main AI companies. Now, this could just be a concept that they have and they will do a lot of iteration like Tesla does, maybe when they first showed us the Cybertruck compared to the production version. That could be the kind of thing we're looking at with this AI-1 satellite, but we know they do want to get this moving incredibly quickly. It's basically a perfect product for what all of these AI companies need in the future if SpaceX can do it. Now, speaking of going public, OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT, just confidentially filed for an IPO with the SEC. Their announcement said, quote, "We expect it to leak, so we're just announcing it. We have not decided on timing yet. It may be a while because there are things we want to do that are likely easier as a private company. There's no share count or price yet, and the timing is still open, but OpenAI was last valued at around $850 billion. This comes about a week after Anthropic, the company behind Claude, filed its own confidential paperwork to go public. So this will take some time, but very soon here, regular investors are about to get their first shot at owning some of the biggest AI companies in the world. It will change a lot of how these companies operate and the different rollouts and updates we see from them. Next up today, on the Robotaxi side of things, Cathy Wood, the CEO of ARK Invest, rode in one this week. She took her first fully unsupervised Robotaxi ride in Austin and said, quote, "The fact that I was talking to you the whole time and didn't pay any attention to the ride itself means that I think it's completely safe." Her Robotaxi also managed to pick up a $75 parking ticket along the way, though. Her question was, how does Tesla plan to handle parking and traffic violations in a Robotaxi world? There's no public answer yet, and that is an interesting thing to see that happen on her ride. For the expansion side of things, a Tesla filing shows the Arizona plans are much bigger than people realized. A Robotaxi first responder plan lists 9 potential operating areas for Level 4 autonomy: Chandler, Gilbert, Glendale, Maricopa County, Mesa, Paradise Valley, Phoenix, Scottsdale, and Tempe. That covers most of the Phoenix metro area, and Tesla already has more than 60 Robotaxi spec Model Ys staged in Phoenix, along with a permit filed for a 56-stall fleet-only supercharger out there. The Cybercab also just showed up in a new state, so we're seeing all of the pieces get laid out in a bunch of different markets, and it's really just the technology and the regulation getting there. The latest version of FSD really has to get to that totally unsupervised version. Now for the Cybercab, a gold one was filmed by a Tesla fan driving I-5 near Seattle and crossing the 520 floating bridge. This is one of the first sightings on Washington highways, so it's a big deal for people that are excited for that to come to Washington. Then over at Waymo, they just bought Apple's old self-driving test site, which is a 5,500-acre proving ground in Arizona. They bought it for $220 million. The site has a 115-acre city course, a 35-acre vehicle dynamics pad, a 4-mile oval, and a freeway course. So it's a full test city, basically, for autonomous cars. Apple spent about 10 years and a reported $10 billion on its car project before shutting it down. They did buy this land for $125 million in 2021, so it seems that Apple made about $95 million on the land itself, although Waymo is buying into what Apple did to the land itself. Next up today, over at Tesla, there's a change hitting Cybertruck reservation holders, and a lot of people are not happy about it. Tesla used to let owners transfer their purchased FSD from an old car to a new one, and that program ended for new orders back in March. Tesla is now contacting people who ordered the $60,000 dual-motor Cybertruck before that cutoff with an FSD transfer attached, telling them the transfer will not be honored on this trim. These customers get 3 options: take the truck and give up the transfer, upgrade to the more expensive premium dual motor or the Cyberbeast to keep it, or cancel and get their $250 reservation fee back. Tesla has also phased out FSD as a one-time purchase, so giving up a transfer here means the only way to get FSD on this new truck is the $99 monthly subscription. A lot of these people held out for the cheaper Cybertruck specifically because they could bring their FSD with them, so this really feels like a bait and switch to many of them. And for me, this goes in the category of stuff I'm not surprised to see Tesla do. It's unfortunate, but they do stuff like this. They don't really honor what the customer really should be able to do in situations like this unless they absolutely have to. Now, if you're one of these order holders, it really comes down to the math. How many months of subscriptions equals the cost of the trim upgrade, and does the truck still make sense without that transfer? Now, speaking of FSD, the European rollout just added another country. Denmark's road authority provisionally approved FSD Supervised, agreeing with the Dutch assessment that the system actually contributes to road safety. Denmark is the fourth European country to approve it after the Netherlands, Lithuania, and Estonia, and all four of these approvals came within about 8 weeks of each other. That puts FSD Supervised in 12 countries across 4 continents. Tesla also released its first ever FSD safety report for a European market. In 2 months in the Netherlands, customers drove 23.6 million kilometers with FSD, and those cars had 3.5 times fewer collisions than manual driving. On highways specifically, the fleet covered 16.6 million kilometers with FSD engaged and had 0 collisions. The report also shows 14.9 times fewer automatic emergency braking events, plus much less harsh braking and acceleration. This is really great data to see, and it's very interesting to see it outside of the United States, although I will want to dive a little deeper into the methodology specifically. Next up today, over at Rivian, R2 customer deliveries have officially started, and this is the most direct Model Y competitor we have seen yet. The R2 is Rivian's smaller, more affordable SUV, first shown back in March of 2024, and it spent the last 2 years in validation testing everywhere from -45 to 122 degrees Fahrenheit. The first version going out is the R2 Performance with launch package at $57,990. That gets you dual motor all-wheel drive with 656 horsepower, a 0 to 60 as quick as 3.6 seconds, and an EPA range of about 330 miles. The launch trim also includes Rivian's hands-free driver assist package, which they value at $2,500, plus semi-active suspension and 4,400 pounds of a tow rating. The cheaper versions are the ones most people are excited for, a premium at $54,000 later this year, and standard long range at $48,490 early next year. Then the base standard at $45,000 in the summer of 2027. Against the Model Y, the R2 Performance matches the Performance trim on efficiency, even though it weighs about 800 pounds more, and it beats it on range, 330 miles versus 306. On the tech side, it runs 11 cameras and 5 radars. Hands-free driving works on about 3.5 million miles of mapped roads in the US and Canada, and a point-to-point driving feature starts rolling out later this year. As for ordering, reservation holders get invitations in batches based on when they reserved and where they live. Then current Rivian owners get bumped up in the line, and once you order, delivery comes in about 2 to 6 weeks later. Every reservation holder will have a timing estimate by the end of June, and new reservations are still open with a refundable $100 deposit. These are built at Rivian's plant in Normal, Illinois, which is the same factory that builds the R1s. Then a second factory in Georgia is coming in late 2028 that adds up to 300,000 units a year. The first production car reviews went live the same day delivery started, so real impressions of this car are coming in pretty quickly, and it seems like overall it's doing quite well. What I want to see is whether the cheaper trims hold on to these numbers, because the $45,000 version was kind of the original pitch for this vehicle, and it doesn't come until the summer of 2027. Now, staying with EV competitors, BYD just released the first official images of a new flagship sedan called the Great Han. It's the first full-size flagship in their Dynasty lineup, and it's coming in both plug-in hybrid and full EV. The EV version gets BYD's second-generation Blade battery and their ultra-fast flash charging tech. The claimed ranges are 880 kilometers for the all-wheel drive version and just over 1,000 kilometers for the rear-wheel drive, though of course that's on China's test cycle, which runs far more generous than EPA numbers. Either way, launch here is expected in the third quarter. Next up today, battery breakthrough claims are something we hear about constantly in the EV world, and one of the biggest recent ones just totally fell apart. It's one that I actually didn't talk about much on this channel because I basically figured it would fall apart. A company called Donut Lab showed up at CES claiming a sodium-based solid-state battery with 400 watt-hours per kilogram, 100,000 charge cycles, and 5-minute charging. A battery researcher known as Zeroth dug into it with more than 20 independent experts, and the conclusion is that it's just a regular lithium-ion cell. The voltage data sits right where lithium-ion lives, and the cell expansion data even shows the fingerprint of a graphite anode. Sodium ions are physically too large to work with graphite. The real energy density works out to around 298 watt-hours per kilogram, definitely not 400 as they claimed. The company raised more than $25 million, and their valuation got pushed up to $1.25 billion after CES, but Finnish authorities are now reportedly investigating. Kyle Connor summed it up pretty well, saying, "This is my shocked face, and I feel exactly the same way." Meanwhile, over at Factorial Energy, they are a US solid-state battery developer that works with Mercedes, and they just got listed on the NASDAQ. One of their test programs saw a Mercedes EQS travel more than 1,200 kilometers on a single charge. Over at Toyota, they keep pointing to 2027 or 2028 for their own solid-state cars as well, though they have been promising batteries like this for years without shipping one. So real solid-state work is happening, but when a battery claim sounds too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true, especially from a new company. Next up today, over at Apple, the first folding iPhone keeps getting more real, and Apple itself can't seem to stop hinting at it. New dummy units based on leaked dimensions show what's reported to be the finalized design: a book-style fold with a 5.5-inch outer screen, a 7.8-inch inner display, and a titanium frame. It reportedly uses Touch ID instead of Face ID, and the expected launch price is north of $2,000, launching alongside the iPhone 18 Pro in September. Apple's own software is very much hinting at this too. In the new macOS beta, there's a Device Hub app that lets you resize the iPhone mirroring window, and one of the shapes it stretches to is basically an iPad. Mark Gurman posted this, saying, "Could they be any more blatant?" And MKBHD said, "Tell me you have a foldable coming without telling me you have a foldable coming." iOS 27 also brings video apps to CarPlay, so you'll be able to watch on the car's screen while parked, and the new version of Siri, Siri AI, comes to CarPlay if you have a recent iPhone. CarPlay is also getting a few updates like audio scrubbing in the Now Playing screen and more reliable wireless connections. Apple's software chief also says the new Siri AI does not run the same Gemini models that Google uses for its own products. It's a custom variant built specifically for Apple. We'll see how much of this actually ships in September, because Apple has promised big software like this before and taken 2 years to actually ship it. Next up today, on the energy side of things, Tesla's Megapack business keeps getting bigger, and we just got a new drone flyover of a new factory near Houston. The Brookshire site has a roughly 600,000 square foot building going up that will handle raw material intake and some assembly. When it's fully ramped, this plant is expected to produce 50 gigawatt hours of Megapacks a year and employ up to 1,500 people. For scale, Tesla's Megapack factory in California does about 40 gigawatt hours a year, and the one in China does about 20 so far. So this becomes the biggest of the three. I think we're going to see Tesla Energy become one of Tesla's biggest businesses, even if it's just Elon's own companies buying those Megapacks. Last up today, some quick mentions. The U.S. Trade Representative is set to tour Tesla's Fremont factory, highlighting onshoring jobs and American production lines. Southwest's first Starlink-equipped planes go live by the end of June, with free Wi-Fi for Rapid Rewards members and up to 300 jets by the end of the year. Over in Europe, Wizz Air is putting Starlink on its new fleet of 250-plus planes, the first European ultra-low-cost airline to do it. A SpaceX Falcon booster became the first to launch and land 35 times. The Model YL has started deliveries in Malaysia, the latest in the Asia-Pacific rollout for that car, and the Model Y was the best-selling vehicle in South Korea in May, with Tesla leading imported car sales for the 4th month in a row. That's all the latest tech, EV, and Tesla news for today. So in the meantime, if you want to see my full breakdown about how Tesla could soon be merging with SpaceX, you can check out that video linked up here or in the description below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.